So today I'm really excited to have Bobak Tavangar here. He's the CEO and co-founder of Brilliant Labs. He's been with Apple before. He's a serial entrepreneur, a real thought leader in AI, AR space, and they're doing some amazing stuff at Brilliant Labs. And so let's actually start there. Let's start with your recent announcement of the Halo product that happened on July 31st. Super cool, very exciting, really cool product. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Yeah, well, it's great to be here with you, Jacob. And that's right. On July 31st, we announced Halo. We think it's going to be the next big step forward for the AI glasses space. And of course, AI glasses is just like AR. It's become kind of this amorphous, word that some people think means one thing, some think means another thing. But for us, it means there is a display. So you can see, heads up information in front of your eyes. It's full color, which is lovely. There's two speakers, there's two microphones, and of course, there's an optical sensor for image capture. All of these components are tuned to be super low power to allow for all day 14-hour battery life. And it means that you're going to be able to hack on these things to do amazing AI workloads that sort of capture the human experience, whether at work or at home and out and about in the world, and deliver really amazing stuff for customers. So it's totally open source, and we're excited to have launched it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into the open source conversation here. Before we do that, can I ask a couple of questions about the hardware itself?
Please, yeah.
So can you, it's a really unique display. Can you talk about how the display works and kind of what makes it possible in full color? I mean, can you describe what that will look like to someone using the Halo product?
Yeah, so we put a lot of effort into the design and component selection for the Halo display. It's full color because we felt color's lovely. We live in color, and you want to be able to see different vectors and graphics and fun things in front of your eyes in the full spectrum of color. You don't want to see monochrome green. That starts to feel dystopian. And so
little matrix effect there, right?
Yeah, a little matrixy in all the wrong ways. It's as if the agents had designed your experience, not Neo and the good guys. And so, yeah, color was important, but of course, there's a lot of heavy constraints in the display world. How small they are, how power consumptive they are, the price point. So we had to be able to navigate all that to be able to offer it at the $299 price point that we offered at, but at the same time be able to find something that was small and low power and still deliver that bright kind of full color experience. The UI of the display, out of the box, it's going to be kind of a retro arcade vibe. So that should feel very nostalgic to people. We love it. Every time we see it, it makes the whole team smile and kind of giggle. So we think people are going to like that. And yeah, it's sort of deceptively simple. You put a little display with a tiny optic on top of that display. There's a mechanical enclosure that allows you to adjust it and sort of rotate it toward the eye. And everyone's got a different interpupillary distance. So you can adjust it side to side to match what your pupil needs. And when you sort of just very gently tilt your head, you can see it. And then when you're looking straight back, it's out of your eyes. It's, unobtrusive. And that's really what we went for. We didn't want something that was cluttering your vision, whether you wanted it or not. We wanted something that allowed people to kind of opt into it. So it's different from most of what else is out there on the market.
It is. It's very cool. And just so I understand correctly, this is a display in that you look at it and you see the graphics. It's not an overlay or an augmented reality version. This isn't where Pikachu is going to be on your countertop. This is where you're actually looking at a display that might have Pikachu on it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It'll be sort of a heads-up display rather than sort of mapping graphics onto the physical plane in front of you. Yeah.
Yep. And how do you make that decision broadly? Like, what are the considerations, pros and cons of each of those options?
Yeah, that is a great question. We really went to this core question that we continue to ask ourselves, which is, why does this new device category exist in our lives? Why should any of us wear this thing? Not just pay money, but also put it on in the morning and take it off in the evening, tolerate it out and about during the day. And the reason that we've come up with, and each company thinks about this differently, but the reason we think about this is these devices ought to pair with incredible intelligence in the cloud to be able to do inference over the day that you have, the life that you live, to be able to complement your mind, such that when you take it off, you'll feel 1,000 IQ points dumber, and you'll be scrambling to put it back on. You won't want to leave the house without it, because what it contributes to your day at work, or what it contributes to your interactions, with friends or with family, it'll just feel so intimate to who you are after a while that when you take it off, you'll miss it. So that to us is really, what these devices are about. It's less about, like a big graphical sort of object, whale flying through the sky or a T-Rex on the table in front of me. Like, we think that stuff is fun. We think VR is great, or sort of big pass-through headsets. We think there's a domain for that. But it's not what we're doing, and we're really trying to stay laser focused on AI inference in front of your eyes. So with that in mind, we worked backward into the hardware. We knew we had to have something thin and light, beautiful all day in terms of battery life. And we knew that we needed something that was unobtrusive. We couldn't optimize the optics. So to your question, we couldn't optimize the optics to sort of, expand and stretch and paint this big graphical thing onto your field of view, onto the physical plane in front of you, because those optics are bulky, those optics are expensive, and those optics don't play well with sort of a really thin, unobtrusive pair of glasses. It's still a bit early in the life cycle, sort of the maturity of some of those hardware components. So we opted for something that felt more like it was a little visual cue from an AI agent that sees and knows and understands your life. And that was all at this stage, that's all we needed to deliver. And then let's see what we do next.
I love that. It's, we call it product people, we call that MVP, right? But it's more than an MVP. I mean, your focus is not really minimal. You're focusing on stripping down the things that make it a viable product. And I love the focus. You said in other interviews, you talked about turning people into superhumans. And I loved that, but I think you trumped it by bringing the new concept where when you take it off, you feel 1,000 IQ points dumber. I feel that way sometimes with AI already in my life. And it's not even the full contextual personal assistant version that you have envisioned. And I think that that's great. So let's now switch to the open source question, or really, I want to broaden it out first. I want to ask you about ecosystems in general, and talk about different ecosystem models, whether that's open source, closed source, hybrid. And you're very passionate about open source. That's something, you are an evangelist of open source, but do your best to give me a balanced view of why closed source might also have some advantages and when hybrids are appropriate. But I'm really interested in your take on ecosystems.
Yeah, and this is sort of a topic that does require a lot of nuance. To your point, we are excited about open source and open sourcing our stuff and seeing what people build on top of that. But we're also not dogmatic. We also see a very, very valuable, very important role for hybrid or closed source ecosystems when applied appropriately. There's going to be some companies out there, like a former employer of mine, that are sort of known for being a very closed, tightly controlled end-to-end ecosystem.
Walled garden, right?
Absolutely. And, we can kind of understand that. A lot of us use devices from that company that we love, and we're used to the end-to-end security and privacy, the buttery smooth optimizations. There are certain advantages to that if you're bought into the first-party experiences. And most people don't need to think a whole lot beyond that. And it's clear that they've optimized there. So I understand and I appreciate that. On the other hand, we decided to think a little bit more in terms of sort of the historical consequence of a new paradigm of computing when it came to us starting the company and thinking about this question of openness. And, for us, we felt, look, the last number of decades, from late 70s and the dawn of the personal computer all the way to the present day, closed ecosystems have largely dominated how each new paradigm has entered our lives.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that to kind of, bash that or be negative. It's purely just, this has tended to be the business model and the approach that has worked. But we do feel that we're living in an age now, finally, where open experimentation doesn't just live at the fringes, but indeed it can characterize a new paradigm. And that can actually unlock a lot of human creativity, a ton of innovation that we've kind of foregone in previous paradigm shifts because they just weren't possible, so no one ever tried. You don't hear the tree that falls if no one ever tried to whack it with an axe, right? Because they just saw this thing is way too thick of a tree given the axe I brought with me, and I'm not even going to try. And so you never know what's possible. Maybe for the environmentalists, that was a bad analogy, but you get my point. So we feel like if all of a sudden everyone's got a tool to be able to craft whatever they want because the whole thing is open, and because there's now this sort of threshold of people worldwide with a developer skill set, vibe coding and AI coding generally is changing who a developer can be, and the AI world itself. Now open source is very much the center of the new paradigm there on the pure AI software side. We felt that a few things were aligned for a new paradigm in hardware and computing to also be open. So, it just feels like the perfect timing for all of this. And we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know where it's all going to go, but it does feel like a few things have lined up. And I think it's going to usher in an age of creativity that mankind has not seen before on computers, in computing. And so we're excited to be a part of that.
It's a great vision. And I'm curious about someone who's studied different business models. And you talked about how with every new computing paradigm, closed models have been the ones that kind of lead us into there. Are there any open source models that you've studied or that you find to be, a mentor or like a guiding light as you think about it? Like whether that's like Microsoft versus Red Hat, whether it's something more like OS, Android. Where do you spend your time thinking and learning about predecessor ecosystems?
And then there's some examples to draw from. There aren't a ton, but there are some. And whenever we think about it, we try to think specifically in the hardware software space, specifically in consumer electronics, because like you mentioned Red Hat, and that's definitely there's a lot of other folks, especially in enterprise SaaS, that you can pull from. But some of the dynamics and how customers engage, their motivations, how you can do billing on top of that, it's so different from our space. And so we try to think, for example, Tesla. They open source so many of their patents, but then they also felt comfortable selling the car. And, it wasn't perhaps every layer of the stack of that car that they open source, but they open sourced a fair bit that they kind of kickstarted an industry and a market for them to sell into. And it certainly, especially around the time they did it, it didn't seem to really hamper sales too much. And, now they're doing services on top of that. And so, we try to look at examples like that where companies can do great hardware that pushes the bounds, but feel very comfortable in the value of that hardware, that they want to spur or catalyze the creation of a market, a broader market, by open sourcing some element of it. Sure. And so it ends up serving them, they get sort of the kudos from open sourcing, of course. There's sort of the positive brand element of that, but also, people take a look at like, oh my God, but you've done something so beautiful and amazing that, it either inspires people to make something similar, or it inspires new industry standards, or it inspires the consumer to buy it. And so we try to think about things in that way that, especially as a market is emerging, there's no zero sum right now. It's all good. And we just need to do whatever we can to contribute to the growth of this market, not try to hold market share so close to our chest that, no one else can grab a piece, because it's just foolish.
Way too early for that. It's such a big opportunity. You want to grow the pie for everyone first and foremost. It's interesting to me. So you are AI glasses, right? So my words, not yours, but like, you're the personal assistant with contextual awareness that's with you for up to 14 hours a day, listening, seeing, knowing what's going on to, as you said earlier, make you 1,000 IQ points smarter. Within that universe, and I might have gotten this wrong, but my understanding is you leverage a variety of different AI models, like kind of like Perplexity, right? Where you have the interface to the AI models, but sometimes it will leverage OpenAI, sometimes Llama, sometimes Grok, potentially DeepSeek. Did I get that correct on how you integrate with the actual LLMs?
Yeah, we definitely design everything under the hood in our platform. So our assistant is called Noah, and so the Noah platform is model agnostic. And so, just like you said, Perplexity similarly is designing their search platform to be model agnostic, so that them and a consumer can select between models and swap things in and out. And because there's so much innovation in the model space, that layer is there's too much transformation there, or rapid evolution, I should say, to be too locked into one model or another. So we approach things very similarly. That being said, we also go a step further. So we recognize that some people are going to want to buy Halo. They're going to want to have an out-of-the-box experience where they're putting it on, they're downloading our app and pairing the device, and then they're just talking to Noah, and Noah is, kind of understanding what it sees and hears and indexing that in memory for later recall. Like, there's all this powerful stuff, but that does not require a single line of code. But then there's going to be other folks, enterprises, startups, people doing really cool stuff that's pushing the boundaries of innovation. They'll want to take advantage of the open source aspect. And so we're making it such that people can sort of ditch the Noah side of the platform entirely, and they can just point Halo to their server. And all of the incredible model magic and back-end logic, whatever they have going on in their server. And there's just sort of an end-to-end relationship there between the hardware and what's going on up in the cloud. And we're not sitting anywhere in between. And we prefer it that way. We think that's better for us, better for the customer, and it keeps things open. So you're correct, but we do try to go that extra layer further, because there's a lot of people doing stuff on premises that we don't want to forego.
Yeah, so there's the very famous Steve Ballmer speech from probably about 10 years ago now, or maybe 20, where he just said developers, developers, developers. And then they turned it into a bunch of memes. So even at Microsoft, with all their glory and scale, they really had to work hard to get developers. And they had to really build an ecosystem that was supportive of developers, attractive to developers. When you're building an ecosystem product and you have end customers in mind, you have developers in mind, how do you go about attracting developers to your ecosystem?
I think taking the first step to be open, I think that's a signal to a lot of folks. What we've learned is that there are many people with a diverse range of technical skill set, diverse range of technical ability, and some are more comfortable on the web, some are comfortable on mobile, some are comfortable as embedded developers directly on the hardware. It's a wide range of folks, and there can be a lot of people can feel very tentative about whether a new platform is something that they too could sink their teeth into and get anything useful out of. And so by signaling that we're open source, we've noticed that tends to get people excited, no matter what range of skill, no matter how they're choosing to engage, because it suddenly signals possibility that no matter how you're building, like, there's a home for you here. So that, I think that's one. We also, in our marketing, I mean, this might sound kind of trite, but I think it helps in how you talk about things. If we say we're open source, but then we're talking a lot about pure consumer features, then I think people get a signal that, oh, this company is really consumery, and they're not really prioritizing developers. So we've tried to bake a lot of that into how we talk about who we are and what we do as well. And then, tooling is a big one. And this is like totally not sexy and people don't want to talk about this, but it is so like documentation and tooling is so critical. We try to maintain well-written, well-organized documentation with a few little fun Easter eggs in there that people can discover and sort of, laugh about or delight in as they're building. So make that a bit of an interesting journey. But also just SDKs like software developer kits that we write that people can use to just quickly have hello world experiences and exercise all the sensors with just a line or two of code. So, I think a few of these things are important as just like essential building blocks. And then actually, if I add one more, it's being accessible and hands-on as a team. So we've got a Discord server, like many folks nowadays, and our whole team is in that server. And we've got tons of folks. Of course, email is, a mainstay way to reach us, but a lot of folks, they like to jump into Discord. They'll ask questions. Either someone in the community will answer, or we've got a lot of team members there who will be able to jump in and answer directly. People are sharing app ideas and collaborating on stuff there. So,
Sure.
I think just a feeling that like these folks are open source. There's great documentation SDKs. I can write one line of code and have some delight in front of my eyes. And there's, a Discord server where I can DM or publicly ask someone in the community or someone on the team a burning question that I have. I think that everything feels at their fingertips. And I think that for developers, that's really important.
How do you see the uptake? Are you seeing a lot of momentum? Do you share metrics on that, or is it more of like a characterization that you share? How is it going? You have a few different versions of open source products. Is it like a groundswell of opportunity? Is it like a nice linear curve? How do you see it?
It's certainly been more sort of tremendous than we thought it was going to be.
Okay. Awesome.
Which is good. I think with our previous device, we had some growing pains as a company. Things suddenly took off. There was a bit of a pop out of the gate, and we were just entirely unprepared for that.
Okay.
And our supply chain.
Yep.
And I think that there was a lot of new learning for me and the team. And so now we have some great systems in place. Some scar tissue and some learning ourselves, but also good systems to be able to just handle the complexity, handle greater volumes. Because we experienced the other side of that previously. And so we tried to then not just correct for that, but also think a little down the road and see, okay, how can we handle even more scale in a way that feels linear, even if the growth is beyond that. So yeah, it's all good news with this launch. And with each device that we've done, at least at this stage, the model, and I talk about this with the team a lot, because this whole product category is emerging very rapidly, and actually both the AI side, but also the hardware, there's just a lot of rapid change happening now. So velocity of innovation is our friend. We think a ton about velocity and less about sort of juicing the lemon on an individual product. So we try to get some sense of how much of a given device we'd like to sell within a tight time frame. And we will build that many devices, we ship them, and we sell out. And then we launch the next one. And we've typically been on an annual cadence, maybe a little over a year. But, we did that with Monocle. We built a bunch of them, sold out. And then when people were banging on the door saying, where the heck is Monocle? I want a Monocle. We came out with Frame. And we did the same thing. Frame sold out. And a couple months later, when people were sort of banging on the door, messaging us, hey, I want a Frame unit, I didn't get to get one, and I'm building this cool thing, and do you have any left? Then we came out with Halo. So, it's going to be tight volumes, and we're excited to kind of, sell them out, ship them out, and then, move on and build the next thing. But the essential, maybe one more thing I'll say on that is, for any of our developers who might be listening, changes in hardware don't mean changes in the developer platforms.
I was going to ask about compatibility, and what are you thinking about there? Because that's the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about speed.
Yes, that is something that we're very conscious of. Like, if you have multiple versions of an iPhone over, a number of years, because at this point it's an annual cadence, if you're a developer, you want to know that it's all iOS. Maybe with each new version, there's a new feature you can take advantage of. There's new possibilities,
Sure.
but every new generation of hardware is not going to completely break what you built. And so we try to take that to heart as well. Even as we are committed to staying open. So, if something isn't in place or something changes, people can always change it back or can always, fork that and modify it for themselves. But we keep a consistency there. That's the common denominator, even as there's kind of an evolution of hardware and sensor capability on top.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Can we, and I love the clarity of build, ship, move on to the next one. I think it makes a ton of sense, especially if you can keep that forward and backwards compatibility and consistency of operating system in place.
Yeah.
Let's zoom out a little bit on the overall smart glasses ecosystem. I'm sure, just like me, you're looking at a variety of different players in the ecosystem, and I'm curious about, what do you see as the biggest gap in today's ecosystem writ large?
That is a very interesting question. I mean, drinking the Kool-Aid on this one, of course, openness. There is no players still. There are some players who are kind of flirting with being open at one part of the stack or another. But there's no one still who's doing, open from the hardware that they themselves design from the ground up, not buy from an OEM. Openness in terms of the firmware on that hardware, and openness in terms of all the software on the mobile and cloud side of things. So the full stack. So we definitely see that as a gap that we feel very excited to be filling. And then we're still a bit surprised by this one, and this is going to change. But glasses that have sort of all-day battery life and offer the full range of sensors. And what I mean by that is, if you think about our human biological sensors, we have eyes, we have ears, we can speak. We have a nose as well, but that's maybe technically, that's a number of years away before our devices can smell. But we think that glasses ought to sort of mimic or ought to parallel our biological sensors. So your glasses ought to be able to speak to you. Speakers. Our glasses ought to be able to see with a camera or an optical sensor. They ought to be able to show you something, through the display and hear through the microphones. And in that way, you can have a true kind of, a symmetry, between the biological and the electrical or the optoelectrical. And so there are still no glasses out there that are not sort of really bulky, kind of, obtuse, 2-hour battery life type stuff that offers that full range. And so that's another area where we're excited to be. And that's just, I'm sure, innovation is fast and furious these days, and I'm sure that's going to change as well. But yeah, those are just a few. If there's one more, and I know I'm doing this a lot, but if there is one more, it's on the AI side of things, and it's glasses that are optimized for AI that is learning and indexing what it sees for kind of memory and recall, like deeper use cases that humans actually use, that we draw from in our own mind every single day, let alone from an AI that's able to observe and understand. A lot of the glasses nowadays, they're either for these kind of quaint little widgets, or they are for watching a YouTube video in front of your eyes, which I never got, but maybe I'm not the right customer. Or they're for social media capture. You have these two big kind of saucer pans on either side of the glasses, and they're capturing Instagram quality images or video, and they're AI glasses. And to us, we just looked at that and we're like, we never felt comfortable sitting with someone with two saucer pans staring back at me. And we never felt comfortable with where that rich media was going, we kind of felt strongly we weren't alone with that. And we kind of didn't want society to devolve into a society where everyone's walking around with these saucer pans, capturing everyone and hoovering it up to, someone's ad machine. So it just didn't feel like the society that human beings ought to be thriving within. It's not the place I want to be raising my kids within. And so, we think about it more in terms of deeper, pervasive use cases that respect your privacy, such that no rich media, no image, no one's face, no one's voice, none of that is just sitting up in some cloud, either waiting to get hacked and leaked, to the dark web or the open internet, God forbid, or ready to get sold off to the highest bidder for someone's, to line someone's pocket and bolster the share price. So we thought really hard about that, and we're like, let's build a device that is future forward, but also sort of, in line with the future that we want us and the next generation living in, a future full of trust and respect between humans and between technology and humans and technology, not one where that's always a false compromise. So that's, those are my thoughts there.
I hear you on the concerns about privacy. What is your solution to privacy? How do you do it differently than what you were talking about with the high fidelity images and audio and storing and the potential hackability of it and opting in to being recorded? How do you guys deal with that?
Yeah, there's a couple of layers to that. I think like table stakes is consent, whether it's someone using the device and having a feature on, or whether it's someone sort of being on the other end of that. We think that consent is really important. Encryption is really, if you can hear that burp, but maybe I start over again.
Actually, anyways, it was a little bit glitchy. I did it. It wasn't. It was the bandwidth. So yeah. Okay. So I think we got you on consent, and if you want to go from there, yep.
Okay. Sorry, I had less pizza for lunch, so
no worries. Well, actually, let me actually stop there, because I wanted to ask about consent. I totally understand consent from the perspective of the wearer, because that's very clear on how to get consent. But if I'm wearing your glasses and I'm wearing them for 14 hours a day, and it's taking context from everywhere I am, I'm not getting consent from every person I walk by on the street to see if it's okay that I just recorded something related to them and the dog that they're walking. Like, how does consent work for the third parties?
Yes, that is. So again, I'm so glad you asked, because there's a lot of nuance to that question. We also tried to look at other folks doing camera-enabled devices, and when they feel they need to ask consent, either socially or legally, and when they don't. Many of us have a camera in our pocket all the time. We'll pull that out. We'll take a photo of our loved ones or a friend or a beautiful scene, and there might be another person or something in that. And we don't feel a compulsion to walk up to them and ask for consent. And there's sort of a social norm in place nowadays. It's like, hey, what comes around goes around. Maybe I'm in their photo next time they're at the Grand Canyon snapping a beautiful photo, and me and my kids happen to have been in it. So there is that level of things. But then there's also sort of the legal minimums, and in every jurisdiction that's going to be different, whether you're in California or whether you're in Europe and Japan, somewhere else. So for us, because we've taken great pains on the AI side of things not to actually record and store rich media, we only will capture on device. We immediately transform that data into 0 and 1 sort of vectors. So it's irreversible mathematical representations of the original rich media, which is discarded. We don't want to save that stuff. We don't want to see that stuff. We don't want someone else seeing that stuff. And we also recognize that might forego, there might be people out there like, no, I want, to use these as, glasses that I use to capture my everyday and moments that I have with my friends and family. And to that, we knowingly have foreclosed that opportunity. And we say, either use your phone or use another pair of glasses. There's other glasses at this point that capture better images, are optimized for that, and they're integrated with that same company's social network up in the cloud. So, those are glasses for you if that's your use case. But for us, it's like immediately at that moment of capture, not only are things end-to-end encrypted from the device you wear all the way up to the cloud, but there is an immediate transformation of that rich media, such that no rich media is ever stored by us. It is 0 and 1 mathematical vector representations of the original thing, which, even if it's hacked, is just gobbledygook nonsense. No one can recreate some image or see some face or hear some voice. But it's enough for a language model to be able to make some inference over, to make sense of. And so, and then there's a bunch of advantages to that beyond privacy as well. But that's certainly what drove our thinking. And so that's how we think about, consent and whether or not something constitutes recording. There's definitely devices that do record and store rich media as is, and we think that the bar is really high for that stuff, and we've taken great pains not to be in that category, which differentiates us even from a phone. If you think about walking around with a phone capturing stuff, we approach things in a really different way as well. So for that stuff, we then there's so much more that we can do, and that's the beginning of a journey for us, is trying to break that seeming dichotomy between being open source, but at the same time, respecting privacy. Right now, I'd say that the gold standard of that in our industry is Apple, and I think Apple has shown a commitment to privacy, but at the same time, they're also, I think many people would characterize them as closed source, and so we want to try to set a new model where you can be open, more open than most, but you can also be privacy protecting. There's no dichotomy between these two things. And so that's what we're trying to be.
Very interesting. So I have 3 questions I ask every person. So I'm just going to do these recurring questions for you. And usually what's good for these is if you do like a 30, 45-second answer, and then you can build it out too, kind of gives us the both takes, if you will. So, question 1 that I like to ask all my guests is, what's the most overrated feature right now in smart glasses?
Ooh. Now I'm gonna respond in a way that feels honest for me, but I'm probably not. It's not the target audience for it. It's social media capture. I mean, I get how you can put together fun advertisements around this, and I get how it could look fun. I press a button and I'm capturing, and but I have amazing cameras on the phone in my pocket, and if I want to capture something like really for social media or for my loved ones to send to friends and family, in private messaging, I'm pulling out my phone, and that's so convenient, and the apps are all right there, and I've got a gorgeous display, and the battery isn't dying. These social media capture glasses, the battery's dead after. I have a friend who owns one from another company, and he live streams and it's dead after half an hour, and so you just don't want that. You've got a phone, like, use the phone. So I do not understand the thing, but I'm probably coming off as an old man right now.
Yeah, I think to me, I'm thinking you're coming off as a former Apple employee.
Yeah. That's right. One or the other. Yeah, maybe both.
No, it's I'm with you on the social media side. However, I don't stream anything, and I certainly don't let my Ray-Ban Metas post automatically to anything. So I don't leverage, and I'm not the audience for the social side. I will say that for me, the not having to take my phone out when I'm doing stuff with my children or my friends, and being able to capture really good images and good videos has opened up a new type of, I would say, personal media for myself, where I can like capture playing with my kids in a different way than having to hold a phone in my hand and do it. So the photography side has been positive for me, but I'm with you. I do not trust, but the same thing with my phone. Like, I post so little that I'm just not in the power user social media group anyways. So I'm just a bad person to talk about it. So I'm in the same old man age bucket of you when it comes to not wanting that stuff up for everyone else to see.
Yeah, well, and I mean, to sort of just riff on that for a second, I'm always curious about the child perception, and it's hard to know. I should actually ask. I have 2 kids. I should ask them, but in our society now, children increasingly and unfortunately have a phone kind of, in their face. A lot and too much. I think that unlike our childhood, children are learning to be performative, which is not a healthy thing, actually. You should do things intrinsically for its own sake, not to perform for the adult with the phone in your face. And so I'm wondering, or I'm curious, with those Ray-Ban Metas that you wear, are the kids aware of the cameras on those, or does it feel less performative for them?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it is pretty nuanced. I've had to use them for a while to be able to answer this, but I can. It is more seamless, so it's better, but it's not perfect. And you almost can't have perfect because then you have a privacy issue. And when it comes to my own kids or people that I'm with a lot, I can actually get consent, where they know that I might be recording and they're fine with it. But there's the white light that comes on, which is one thing that's important for privacy and notification so that you don't do creepy things.
Yeah.
The second thing is there's only real two ways right now to activate the photo. And this is where, even though it's more subtle, they still know it's time to perform, be performative, because you either have to click here and then so they know you're grabbing it, or you have to you have to give it a voice command to make it activate. And so at that point, it's not quite as blatant as holding a camera in their face. But the real advantage is now you have both hands. Now you can engage naturally and normally, versus, almost like you're the art director that is outside of the engagement at that point. So you can be in the engagement still. So it's not so subtle that the kids don't perform, but so it hasn't really solved that problem, although it's made it a little better. I think it's more just allowing you to be in the moment differently that I think is the advantage.
Yeah.
But I think, like you said before, there's different glasses for different reasons. And to me, that spans everything from the most basic glasses, which just might be like audio streaming, Bluetooth, phone conduction devices, up to super fancy AR goggles that are fully immersive. And there's different glasses for different things. And we know that's true from other consumer electronics. There's reasons that you use a watch. There's reasons you use a fitness band. There's reasons you use earbuds versus headphones. There's reasons you use laptops versus tablets versus mobile phones. So we're used to choosing the level of abstraction. And just some people, if I'm going to be going to the beach, I'm more likely to wear my Ray-Ban Metas, because then I'm going to be playing with the kids. And I can take good pictures while I'm engaged. But if I'm just doing my daily life, I'm more likely to do it all day, very comfortable, very seamless AI coach. That would make more sense for me because, most of the time I don't need to be in picture mode, recording mode. I want my virtual assistant with me instead, getting the context and making me smarter, as you said. So I think there's different use cases, different applications, different hardware, different software. So the pie is expanding massively. I know that.
That's right.
All right. So the second question that I like to ask all my guests is, what's the most underrated metric that signals that now is time for adoption? Where's the signal in all of this noise?
Wow, it's another wonderful question. I think so there are these metrics that they're surface level metrics, and maybe some people would actually very reasonably say these are the ones that actually matter. But sales numbers, industry volume, and that stuff really does matter. I mean, that's a very clear indicator. But if I try to think about this at a deeper level, stuff that we try to clue into, I'd say is there clarity of use case? And this is especially relevant for us in an open ecosystem where many of our customers are building things on top of our devices. We try to have an ear to the ground in terms of what they're building and how serious they are about building it. Are they building this for something mission critical? Is this a new business they're building? Is there a lot of crisp clarity in terms of what it ought to be and what value proposition it ought to bring to the customer? Are they really sprinting on it? And we are, over the last year, we're getting, it's like it's like 1,000% change in terms of when we first announced Frame until today, our previous device Frame until today, when we've launched Halo, the difference in people's sense of purpose and clarity around use case. And that's large companies that are buying our devices. And it's also independent startups and indie developers, industrial companies that are deploying this across a workforce, all kinds of folks. There is a ton of sort of resolute clarity in terms of what needs to be built and how mission critical that is. So that to us is like a really meaningful, deep signal that this industry is serious now. This thing is, the submarine is making elevation, and it's reaching a point where many people are starting to be educated in terms of what it is and wanting to jump aboard and be a part of that story. But it also means that we are, I think, building in the right direction in terms of our products and our ecosystem and what people can do with them. So.
That's great. I love the idea that your signal is the clarity with which people can bring new devices to market, what they know the purpose is for, what they're doing and why they're doing it, and who their customer is. I know that a lot of the companies you work with, you would be unable to talk about what those purposes are. It's under NDA, it's pre-launch. Are there any things that you can talk about to give an example of some of that clarity and how you've seen the emergence from general thinking about smart glasses, maybe a few years ago, turning into purposeful clarity about use cases and applications today?
Yeah, I mean, if let's say 2 years ago, it was a lot of folks who were, they were experimentally trying to connect building blocks and, run something for themselves, maybe on a weekend, or bring the device to a hackathon and build something fun with their friends that they could then, share on social media. Now it's folks wanting to build a business. So, something for the restaurant industry, for example, that uses devices like this deployed across a workforce.
Interesting. Okay.
Or, someone in the healthcare space, who has really deep knowledge of some of the pain points that doctors and nurses and administrators feel, but also the patient side of the story, how you can up quality for working conditions for those folks, but also, up quality and speed and efficiency for folks that walk into the hospital and need care. So it just feels a lot more kind of high value, mission critical. And there's like really serious teams and resources being put behind building stuff out. So it's picked up speed a lot.
It's really interesting. It makes me think of vertical SaaS from the 2010s, like where, it used to just be like an ERP. And then it became an ERP for veterinary clinics, and then someone would get really deep in what a veterinary clinic really needs. And that makes a lot of sense for especially commercial applications of smart glasses, but maybe even consumer. We were talking about it earlier about sometimes you want really good high resolution videos and photos, and sometimes you want crystal clear music, and other times you just want a good voice assistant. And so every scenario is different. So thanks for that example. All right. My third and final question I like to ask everyone is, what's one misconception from the press or the public that you think is wasting the most time when it comes to this conversation about smart glasses and where we're going?
I mean, I'm trying to think of how I can say something that, again, doesn't make me seem like an old man.
It's okay. Like, wisdom.
No. Yeah. I wish it was more wisdom. It's probably going to come across more as like, a rant, but,
get off my lawn.
I think there's a lot of folks who, maybe I think there's a lot that I could say. It's another good question. And there's a lot that could be said. I think one thing that isn't always helpful, but I understand where it comes from. There's been a ton of excitement around the emergence of this space for decades. There are people I've met who, since the 80s, have been waiting for the emergence, have been waiting for now. They've been waiting for the emergence of a beautiful pair of glasses that you can wear to show things in front of your eyes, and and AI and just magical stuff. And that stuff it's been baked into science fiction for decades, and many of us, we love the games, the sci-fi, the mythology of the product category and what this will be. And so that, unfortunately, as exciting as that is, that can find its way into the press and people's expectations as well. So
Okay.
yeah, and so um, you know that, and I think that this is starting to fade now as there are more devices, and as this emerging, I hesitate to call it an industry, but like this sort of sub industry, this category of product begins to mature, like begins, very beginning, begins to mature. I think that people's expectations are also starting to align with where things truly are, and I think people are realizing we're in for a multi-year journey. That tomorrow you're not going to get the glasses, whether from us or from any other company, that's going to make your sci-fi dreams come true. That this is a journey, and that people are hopefully signed up and ready for that journey. And as an open platform, we certainly are excited to partner with all manner of folks to do that.
Are you familiar with the Gartner Hype Cycle?
I am. Yes.
All right. So where do you think, so your answer kind of spoke to me as Gartner Hype Cycle, right? Where you're like, people are expecting Geordie LaForge from Star Trek, Yeah. But all right, aren't you going to be pretty happy with like a fully contextually aware AI assistant, as the alternative? So where do you feel like smart glasses are in terms of, and I'll just remind you kind of the main areas or people listening that aren't as familiar. So there's like technology trigger. That's the starting point. Peak of inflated expectations. Oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. Like the world will never be the same. Trough of disillusionment. Oh, it doesn't work like people said it was going to be. Slope of enlightenment. Yeah, this is where people and companies are trying to figure out like the right way of using the technology to make it work. And then finally, the plateau of productivity. Once that slope of enlightenment kind of reaches its almost point of asymptotic returns, where it's not going to get much better from here. Where would you put smart glasses today?
Yeah, I'd say that we're sort of like at the early stages of that slope of enlightenment.
Okay.
It's that there was a deep, dark trough, and I think that a lot of folks were in it. And I think a bunch of companies that had raised tons of capital and made really big, lofty promises a few years back that they didn't live up to those promises. Sort of a couple of big belly flops in a row, and I think there was some disillusionment off the backs of that. But I think now folks are reorienting expectations and are excited again about what these devices might bring into our lives. And I think a lot of that's also off the backs of what we're seeing in the generative AI space. And just
those are converging rivers for sure. Like I appreciate Mark Zuckerberg's vision for what glasses can do and the ambition. And Francesco Maleri from EssilorLuxottica has similar ambitions. I will say that as much as those visions are important and the investments they're making are very bold, the timing of AI coming in and moving so quickly is one of the better to be lucky than good moments in history. Because, to be fair, Mark Zuckerberg knows that it's been converging for a while, but the convergence of AI with miniaturization of electronics, the ability to do like more seamless charging, which is something we bring to the table, with longer battery lives, which is constantly being worked on, lower powered sensors, better displays, better haptics, all of these things, they all matter. But the tailwind of AI is what I think is really going to set smart glasses off, because it is a better place to be on the face than in the pocket.
Yeah.
If you can get really good smart glasses as a company, if Meta can fulfill that vision, they are in a strategically better position than Apple or Google at that point, because being in the pocket or on the wrist just does not have nearly as much access to our five senses, and it does not have nearly as much context. And we know that AI is fed on good context. So no. I think that AI convergence is just absolutely massive for the whole market.
Yeah, totally agree. No, this is it's an exciting time to be alive. So
that's for sure.
Yeah.
When you're building it, you're making it happen. So it's great to be able to talk with you about your vision, the ecosystem approach, your speed of developing new products so that developers can come to the platform, count on the OS being the same, but see advances in hardware and functionality over time. This is part of what makes ecosystems, grow and boom. And it's awesome to see what you guys are doing. And it's been a pleasure talking with you about it.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.